President Trump, through his first administration in the presidency, and it continues now, has been very clear about his commitment to defeating this threat of Islamist terrorism that has unfortunately plagued us, has and continues to pose a direct threat to the American people. But we see how it's been impacting people here in India, in Bangladesh, currently ongoing in Syria, Israel, and different countries in the Middle East.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak out against the violence and persecution of Hindus and other religious minorities in Bangladesh. During Bangladesh's War of Independence in 1971, an estimated 300,000 to 3 million people were killed, mostly Hindus. Hindus in Bangladesh continue to be targeted today, with their homes and businesses being destroyed and their temples vandalized. Since the ousting of the former Prime Minister last August, these attacks have increased again, with over 2,000 incidents reported in August alone.
I speak, Bangladeshi Hindus are being subjected to increasingly violent persecution. Sadly, not a new occurrence, though one that's increased in severity and frequency in recent days. The rule of law and the maintenance of social order in parts of Bangladesh is breaking down, and we're seeing the most terrible outcomes. Hindu neighbourhoods have been targeted, with households, temples and workplaces being attacked by large violent mobs. Families have had to flee their homes amid beatings. Looting and arson attacks are rife, with reports that Hindus have been killed in these attacks. In Bangladesh, there's a lack of respect for people from different faith traditions, as well as people who hold different political views. The plight of Bangladeshi Hindus cannot be ignored. I call on the government of Bangladesh to uphold the principles of democracy and the rule of law.
August 5th, 2024. At Gano Bhavan, the Prime Minister's residence, the air was different that day. It was time for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to pack her bags for a journey that would mark a new chapter for both her and the nation. On this day, an authoritarian regime that had ruled for nearly 16 years came crashing down. This was the very regime of the Awami League, the party that once liberated Bangladesh from Pakistani occupation and its brutal administration, which left behind a legacy of discrimination, atrocities, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and what many describe as the genocide of Hindus in 1971. Now the same party stands accused of everything it once claimed to fight against, including betraying the cause of minority Hindus, a community that had placed its trust in the party's promise of secularism and fairness. Prime Minister Hasina and her government have abandoned that promise. In an ironic twist, she flees to India, a place that she publicly insinuated and accused the Hindus of Bangladesh. Having 2 feet in 2 boats, meaning the Hindus have divided loyalty to their country of birth that questioned their patriotism. Now she has only one place to go in the whole world, and only one nation to offer her refuge is India and Indian people, a Hindu majority country. Hasina's authoritarian government had long stoked public anger. Even her kleptocratic administration's secret support for jihadist groups couldn't stave off its eventual collapse.
The July Uprising, From Hope to Horror. In July 2024, a movement against discriminatory job quotas initially united students across religious lines in a genuine fight for fairness. But soon, radical Islamist groups hijacked the uprising. Many Hindu students, who had marched alongside their Muslim peers, became casualties of the Hasina regime's brutal crackdown. A student uprising initially sparked by protests against a quota system in government jobs reserved for descendants of the 1971 freedom fighters soon took on a far more ominous tone. What began as an ostensibly apolitical fight for fairness, the so-called July Uprising, quickly morphed into a full-blown anti-government revolt. Between mid-July and August 5th, security forces and members of the Awami League's student wing reportedly killed hundreds of demonstrators. A new Bangladesh, in the words of Professor Younus, Bangladesh version 2, was born on August 5, 2024.
Bangladesh next version. It's amazing, meticulously designed thing. It's not just suddenly came, it's not like that. Very well designed. Even the leadership pattern, people don't know who the leaders.
Although it appeared to be a spontaneous protest against a flawed quota system, it wasn't an accident. This was no random outburst, explains Professor Younus. The movement was meticulously planned, and so were its devastating consequences. Professor Younus, invited by the students, took an oath on August 8, 2024. So doesn't it mean the students' invitation to Dr. Younus was carefully orchestrated, not a spontaneous act? His acceptance wasn't an abrupt decision, it was pre-planned, and his extended absence from the country wasn't coincidental. How is it that his scheduled criminal trial on August 5, 2024 coincided with Hasina's departure for India? The fallout from this calculated uprising was equally prearranged. The first 3 days from August 5th to 8th became a period of unchecked violence. Jihadists and certain quote-unquote anti-discrimination student groups unleashed a reign of terror. One meant it was mere lip service from the army chief to claim responsibility until a new government is formed, offering quick immunity to some miscreants of July uprising when the Younus government emerged, a pre-planned one.
When Sheikh Hasina's government fell on August 5, 2024, and she fled to India, chaos erupted on the streets of Bangladesh. Hindu students, once part of the uprising, and Hindus across the country were among the first victims. The martyrdom of countless Hindus and students marked the beginning of a calculated wave of violence. Over a brutal 3-day period, from August 5th to 8th, the nation witnessed a massacre, killings, arson, rape, and the systematic destruction of Hindu homes, temples, and businesses. According to Protham Low, a widely circulated Bengali daily, at least 1,068 incidents were recorded, and the Bangladesh Hindu Buddha Christian Oikyo Parishad reports that over 2,000 incidents targeting Hindus took place between August 5th and 20th of the year 2024. Meanwhile, the Younus government promptly issued an immunity order protecting those responsible for the crimes committed from July through August 2024. Hindu teachers in disproportionate numbers were targeted and forced to resign.
আমি শিখারানী রায়, সহকারী প্রধান শিক্ষক, আকুপুর ইয়াকুবলী বুয়া পাবলিক উচ্চ বিদ্যালয়, মুরাদনগর, কুমিল্লা। 17/9/2024 তারিখে হেডমাস্টার মোহাম্মদ বিল্লাল হোসেন আমাকে 8:22 কল করে বললো যে আপনি দ্রুত স্কুলে চলে আসেন, মিটিং আছে। গিয়া 3:30 আবুল বাসার আয়সা বলতেছে, এই তোমার মোবাইলটা দাও। আজে বাজে অপ্রাসঙ্গিক কথা। আমি বলে, শুনেন, এত আজে বাজে অপ্রাসঙ্গিক কথা বললেন না, আমার চাকরি জীবনে কোনো ব্যর্থতা নাই। তারপরে ছেলে মেয়েদেরকে ডাকাইয়া স্টাফ রুমের সামনে জড়ো করছে। এই ছেলে মেয়েদেরকে ব্রিফিং দিতেছে, তোমরা কি ম্যাডাম রে চাও নাকি চাও না। ওদেরকে স্যার ব্যবহার করে স্যার, ওরা স্যার ওইভাবে স্যার আমার সাথে আচরণ করলো স্যার। এরা ওই মানে পদত্যাগ পত্র রেডি করে নিয়ে এসেছে স্যার, কম্পিউটারে টাইপ করে। ছাত্রছাত্রীরা প্রায় 1-1.5 ঘন্টা স্যার আমার সাথে স্যার জবরদস্তি করছে। আমি অজ্ঞান হয়ে গেছি গা, আবার আমার উপরে জল ঢালছে। 1-1.5 ঘন্টা স্যার হয়েছে, পারে না স্যার। তখন এরারে বাইরে করে দিয়ে স্যার উনার নিজস্ব ক্যাডার বাহিনী যে স্যার, এই ক্যাডার বাহিনীর ঢুকাইছে স্যার। দরজা জানালা রুম মানে বন্ধ করে স্যার আমারে প্রায় 2 ঘন্টা স্যার টর্চার করছে। আমার হাতড়ি মুসরাইয়া স্যার ভাঙ্গা লিছে স্যার। এই পদত্যাগ পত্রে স্বাক্ষর করতাম। আবার কলমা পড়ে ধর্মান্তরিত হ, মুসলমান হ। পুলিশকে যখন অভিযোগ করছি, উনার ছেলে স্যার উপদেষ্টা না, পুলিশরা স্যার আমার এগুলা দেখে স্যার আশ্চর্য হয়েছে, একজন হিন্দু মহিলার উপরে এইভাবে অত্যাচার করলো। তখন ওসি আমারে ঢাকায় নিছে, নিয়ে কইছে যে ম্যাডাম আপনি এটা আমরা কি তদন্ত করতে পারবো? ম্যাডাম আপনি কোর্টে যান, কোর্টে গিয়ে মামলা করেন। আমার একজন সহকারী শিক্ষক আছে কৃষ্ণপদ চক্রবর্তী, তার বাড়ি গ্রামে, কিন্তু সে তো এই রুমে নাই। সাত্তার নামে একজন বলে কি যে তাই রে এমনি তাই রে, আর তারে কল্প করা পরাইয়া দুটো বিয়া দিয়ে
আমি কার্তিক চন্দ্র, ঢাকার 3টি মহিলা কলেজে একজন রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান বিভাগের শিক্ষক হিসেবে 14 বছর শিক্ষকতা করেছি। সর্বশেষ উক্ত বিভাগের বিভাগীয় প্রধানের দায়িত্ব পালন করেছি। 2024 সালে জুলাই আগস্টে ছাত্রদের দ্বারা তথাকথিত বৈষম্য বিরোধী আন্দোলনের আমি সেই একজন হতভাগ্য শিক্ষক যাকে ওরা জোরপূর্বক পদত্যাগ করতে বাধ্য করেছে, কারণ আমি একজন সংখ্যালঘু হিন্দু সম্প্রদায়ের মানুষ। ওরা আমাকে টানা 1 সপ্তাহ অবরুদ্ধ করে রেখেছে। সর্বশেষ আমার জীবনের মায়ের কারণে এবং আমার পরিবারের কথা চিন্তা করে ওরা প্রিন্সিপালের রুমে আমাকে নিয়ে জোরপূর্বক স্বাক্ষর করতে বাধ্য করেছে পদত্যাগপত্রে।
আমি তোমার সরকার শিক্ষা ক্যাডারে ছিলাম 18 বছর। জেলে যেতে হয় শেখ হাসিনা সরকার, আওয়ামী লীগ সরকার যখন ক্ষমতায়। দুর্গাপূজায় যেটা হচ্ছিল সেই জায়গাটায় আমি শুধু হত্যার প্রতিবাদ করেছিলাম এবং বলেছিলাম যে কোনো সনাতন ধর্মের মানুষ সেখানে কোরআন শরীফ রেখে নিজের প্রতিমায় সেখানে পূজা এটা করবে না, ধর্ম অবমাননা করবে না, আর যদি হয়ে থাকে সেটা তো সনাতন ধর্মেরই অবমাননা হয়েছে। এবং সরকারকে বলেছিলাম যে আপনারা 13 তারিখ থেকে যেটা হচ্ছে সেখানে 13 মিনিট লাগবে না, আপনারা এত বছর ধরে ক্ষমতায় আছেন, আপনারা এটা বন্ধ করুন। সরকারের প্রেস্টিজে লেগেছে, শেখ হাসিনা সরকারের, তারা রাতের অন্ধকারে দরজা ভেঙে আমাকে নিয়ে যায়, আমার দুটো শিশুকে তাদেরই আত্মীয় যাদের সন্তান নেই, নিঃসন্তান দম্পতি, তাদের হাতে তুলে দেয় মুসলিম একটা পরিবারে এবং তারা আমাকে জেলে ছুড়ে দেয়। সেখানে আমাকে ডিভিশনও দেওয়া হয় না, আমি যার পর নাই কষ্ট করি, আর সে বাচ্চার সঙ্গেও আমি জেল থেকে আর যোগাযোগ করতে পারিনি। যাই হোক, সেরকম একটা জেলে থাকা 70 দিন, তারপরে বেরিয়ে আসলেও সেই আওয়ামী লীগ সরকার আমাকে আর চাকরিটা করতে দেয়নি। আমাকে খুব গোপনীয় ভাবে সাময়িক বরখাস্তে রাখা হয় এবং আমি যাতে সাময়িক বরখাস্ত হয়েছে এটা জানতে না পারি সেই জন্য আমাকে বেতনও ওঠাতে দেওয়া হয়নি। আমি আমার সঞ্চিত টাকা দিয়ে দুটো সন্তান আমার, এরা যমজ, ইংলিশ মিডিয়ামে পড়তো, অনেক কষ্ট করে আমার সেই সময়গুলো পার করছিলাম। কিন্তু 2024-এ আমাকে হঠাৎ করে বলছে, আমার দরজায় এসে লাথি দিচ্ছে আগস্টের 4 তারিখেই। তারপর মেসেঞ্জারে থ্রেট করছে, তোর মা চলে গেছে, তুই কবে যাবি। আমার আর বুঝতে বাকি থাকেনি যে আমাকে এখন সরে পড়তে হবে। তো সেরকমই একটা পর্যায়ে ওরা এতদিন জামাতপন্থী শিক্ষকরা আমাকে প্রকাশ্য থ্রেটও করেছে, যেটা 2019 সালে আমি সূত্রাপুর থানায় একটা জিডিও করেছিলাম, আমি কিভাবে চাকরি করি সেটা দেখবে। এবং 2019 থেকে 2024 আমার ঠিকানা আর বাংলাদেশে থাকলো না। এই যে কয়েক বছরের মাথায় এইভাবেই ওরা চলতে থাকলো। তো 2024-এ যখন ছাত্রদেরকে লেলিয়ে দিল এবং অত্যন্ত বাজেভাবে ব্যানার ফেস্টুন নিয়ে এবং আমার ছবি যুক্ত করে সেখানে আমার ছবিতে ওরা প্রস্রাব খাওয়াচ্ছে, এগুলো করছিল, সে সময় আমি বাধ্য হই দুটো বাচ্চা নিয়ে দেশ ত্যাগ করতে 1 বছরে।
Journalists, many of whom are Hindus, have also been detained and sued, their numbers alarmingly disproportionately high. Meanwhile, Hindu businessmen and businesswomen have been coerced into paying exorbitant fees to keep their already shuttered businesses afloat. Many hotels run by Hindus, which traditionally do not serve beef for religious reasons, have been closed by jihadist elements or are in the process of being shut down. The Younus administration has remained conspicuously silent on these issues. The year Bangladesh got liberated, the policies of repression and persecution against Hindus have a long legacy, carried on by successive governments following in the footsteps of their Pakistani predecessors.
In 1971, Bangladesh emerged as an independent nation, breaking free from Pakistan with the crucial support of India. It was a war fought in the name of justice, freedom, and secularism. Yet for many, particularly the Hindu population, the victory would soon turn into a betrayal. What began as a movement for equality soon became a system of oppression, culminating in one of the worst genocides of the 20th century in 1971, and later after that, a slow but steady ethnic cleansing of Hindus in Bangladesh till today.
The Betrayal of a Dream. On January 10, 1972, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the leader of the independence movement, addressed the nation. Instead of reaffirming the secular ideals for which so many had sacrificed their lives, he declared Bangladesh the second largest Muslim country in the world. This statement, coupled with his subsequent political decisions, joining the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, failing to repeal the Enemy Property Act, and neglecting to return the Ramna Kalabari temple to the Hindu community, sent a clear message. The promise of an inclusive Bangladesh was already disintegrating.
The systematic marginalization. After the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1975, successive governments in Bangladesh, led by Ziaur Rahman, Hussein Muhammad Ershad, and Khalida Zia, systematically deepened discrimination against the Hindu minority. The official declaration of Islam as the state religion and the institutionalization of anti-Hindu policies accelerated the community's decline. Between 1970 and 2008, Bangladesh's Hindu population shrank significantly, amounting to what can be described as a silent but deliberate act of ethnic cleansing. Ziaur Rahman initiated the erosion of secularism from the Bangladeshi constitution and systematically discriminated against Hindus in both public and private sectors. Hussein Muhammad Ershad escalated these efforts by amending the constitution in 1988 to officially designate Islam as the state religion. Khalida Zia carried this legacy forward, even incorporating anti-Hindu rhetoric into her election campaigns. She urged voters to back her party to prevent the sound of conch shells, used in Hindu temple rituals, from replacing the azan, the Muslim call to prayer.
Under Khalida Zia's leadership, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, in alliance with the Islamist party Jamaat-e-Islami, orchestrated widespread violence against Hindus following the 2001 elections. The brutality was so severe that when the rival Awami League took power in 2009, it formed the Shahabuddin Commission to investigate the atrocities. The commission documented 3,625 incidents of violence against Hindus between October 1, 2001 and December 31, 2002. However, neither the BNP nor the Awami League took any action against the perpetrators. Despite their ideological and political differences, Bangladesh's major political parties have shown remarkable unity when it comes to persecuting Hindus, exposing a deep-rooted bipartisan failure to protect minority rights.
The Hasina era, a facade of inclusion. For the past 16 years under Sheikh Hasina, the cycle continued. Unlike previous regimes, she strategically appointed a few prominent Hindus to create an illusion of inclusivity. But behind the facade, persecution intensified. Any Hindu who dared to oppose the government faced severe consequences: false imprisonment, exile, or worse.
In Bangladesh, their spiritual leader is under arrest. Hindus across Bangladesh are being subject literally to death by their houses being burnt, their temples are being burnt, and there was an attempt today in the Bangladesh High Court to rule that ISKCON should be banned from the country. This is a direct attack on Hindus. Now, this is a threat from India now to take action. We have a responsibility because we enable Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way. So far, we've only had a written statement from the FCDO, so could the leader enable an oral statement on the floor of this House so it can bring to the world's attention what is going on in Bangladesh?
কিন্তু আজকে 3 মাস হয়ে যাচ্ছে দৃশ্যমান কোন অগ্রগতি 6,000 incidents of torture upon the religious minority. I have documented. In my report, I have submitted a report to the United Nations. Rape, abduction, forceful conversion, and also dacoity and robbery against the minority community, and also desecration of the Hindu deities and destruction of the temple. There are so many reports I have deposited in the United Nations also.
দেশদ্রোহিতা মামলার যে এলিমেন্ট থাকা দরকার, তো ওখানে কোন রকম এলিমেন্ট চিন্ময় বাবুর বিরুদ্ধে আছে কি?
না নাই তো, এটা তো এফআইআর এর পড়লেই তো বলা যায়।
শুধুমাত্র জাতিগত হিন্দু হওয়ার জন্য তারা অ্যাফেক্টেড। আপনারা জানেন যে প্রত্যেকটা ইনসিডেন্সের আগে আমাদের বলা হয় এটা একটা পলিটিক্যাল একটা ইনসিডেন্স। আমরা মনে করি না, এটা আসলে মানবাধিকারের লঙ্ঘন।
Hasina's strategy was insidious. By co-opting certain Hindu figures, she ensured that any internal resistance was stifled, even pitting one Hindu against another.
Suppressing dissent, the enactment of the Digital Security Act provided Hasina's government with a potent new tool for oppression. Hindu activists who dared to speak out against state-sanctioned discrimination were silenced through imprisonment, harassment, and, in some cases, assassination. False charges were leveled, voices were systematically silenced, and a climate of fear descended upon the minority community.
After Hasina, a new regime, the same old story. With the fall of the Hasina regime, many hoped that the era of false promises and false narratives would finally end. There was talk that a professor, a Nobel Laureate, would lead the country toward fairness and non-discrimination. Given the ordeal and personal humiliation that Professor Younus had to endure in the hands of Hasina, civil society, Hindus, other minorities, and general populace believed that those days of darkness were over. But for the Hindus in general, hope remained elusive. As the dust settled, the new government fell into the same pattern: silence, denial, and the dismissal of atrocities. Once again, Hindu voices were stifled. Prabhu Chinmoy Das emerged as a spokesperson for Hindus oppressed by the Younus administration, but soon he's been implicated in false sedition case along with many others, including Hindu advocates who offered their services to fight for his freedom. Why is Prabhu Chinmoy Das behind bars?
যদি কেউ সাহস করে এই চিন্ময় দাসের পক্ষে এবং চিন্ময় দাসের দোষরের পক্ষে কেউ যদি ওকালতি করতে চায় কিংবা ওকালতনামা দাখিল করে, সাথে সাথে এই কোর্ট বিল্ডিং এর তাকে গণপিটা দিতে হবে।
A false case of sedition was filed by a once prominent BNP leader for merely flying the national flag below his organization's flag. It was a feeble excuse to detain him and silence the voices of the oppressed. Why is he denied legal representation? And why has no one been held accountable for the systematic persecution of Hindus?
The interim government's silence. Initially, the Younus government remained silent. Then they tried to portray the protests by Hindus against the oppression as politically motivated. And lastly, they recognized the existence of quote, unquote, some 78 incidents of violence and 70 arrests without mentioning who those culprits are, where they happened, and what charges being brought against those alleged culprits.
The media's role, truth or manipulation, the mainstream media was more invested in disproving reports rather than uncovering the truth. Even if some information was false, that does not invalidate the real horrors that unfolded. International media outlets like the BBC, Voice of America, and Metro News were more focused on debunking alleged misinformation than on exposing the atrocities committed against minorities. The question remains, was this neglect born of bias or was something even more sinister at play?
তবে আমাদের একটা দাবি আছে আপনাদের কাছে। সেই দাবিটা হইছে আমার পুরো মুসলিম ভাইদের পক্ষ থেকে, যে দাবিটা হইছে ওরে আমাদের হাতে 10 মিনিটের জন্য হইলে দিতে হবে।
আমি ডক্টর সুশান্ত কুমার পাল চৌধুরী। আমি কৃষি মন্ত্রণালয়ের অধীনে বাংলাদেশ কৃষি গবেষণা কাউন্সিলে সদস্য পরিচালক পদে কর্মরত ছিলাম এবং 2001 সালে আমি বাংলাদেশ কৃষি গবেষণা কাউন্সিলে থাকা অবস্থায় আমি মৎস্য গবেষণা ইনস্টিটিউট প্রতিষ্ঠা করি। শিশুকাল হতে হিন্দুদের প্রতি অত্যাচার দেখেছি এবং নিজেও অত্যাচারের শিকার হয়েছি, কিন্তু 2024 সালের অগাস্ট থেকে যে অত্যাচার হয়েছে তা আগের সব কিছু অত্যাচারকে ছাড়িয়ে গেছে। ইউনুসের ছত্রছায়ায় তথাকথিত বৈষম্য বিরোধীরা আমাকে শারীরিক নির্যাতন করে এবং হত্যার হুমকি দেয়। সেই জন্য আমি দেশ ছাড়তে বাধ্য হয়েছি।
আমি শিউলি শিকদার, আমি একজন হিন্দু। আমি আমার কর্মজীবনে আমি একজন মিডিয়া অ্যাক্টিভিস্ট। বিভিন্ন সময়ে আমার উপরে হুমকি ধামকি এবং আক্রমণের শিকার হই আমি। 5 আগস্টের পরে আমার প্রাণনাশের হুমকি আসে এবং আমাকে আমার কর্মস্থল থেকে জোর করে পদত্যাগে বাধ্য করা হয়। তখন আমি প্রাণ ভয়ে যুক্তরাষ্ট্রে পালিয়ে আসি।
Victims may not be victimized for any falsehood by any third party or parties.
History repeats itself. In 1971, General Yahya Khan oversaw a brutal crackdown on Bangladesh's fight for freedom. Today, many ask, has Dr. Younus become a modern-day Yahya, or does he compete with his neighboring Nobel Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi? Bangladesh's struggle for justice remains far from over. The burning question is, will the world continue to turn a blind eye?
I think we owe an explanation to the audience why we have chosen the name, the title, Yahya to Younus. We have not chosen this name, this title, only because their names are similar sounding, but to show that these people are really connected by their purpose. Yahya did the same thing that Younus is doing. Actually, Younus picked up from where Yahya left off. How? If you go back in 1970 election, that really gave the Awami League the legal standing for the liberation war. How? It was Awami League that won most seats East Pakistan. 167 seats out of 169 seats. If you look at the demographic in East Pakistan versus West Pakistan, in West Pakistan, the number of Muslims living is 500,000 more than at that time living in the East Pakistan. So, had this election been held among the Muslims, if only the Muslims were the voter, and Awami League had no chance of winning this majority, because in East Pakistan at that time about 20% people were Hindus, and any calculation will show, any mathematics will show, Awami League would have lost at least 50 to 75 seats in East Pakistan, meaning without majority. And all the Islamic parties, they received about 30% votes against Awami League in East Pakistan, where Awami League received only about around 20,000 votes in whole West Pakistan. The number shows that it was Hindu population that made the difference. That is the reason why Awami League did have the legal position, legal validity to fight this war. So Hindus made the difference and Bangladesh was born. This calculation was not unknown to the West Pakistani rulers. So they wanted to subjugate the population of East Pakistan, and only impediment on their way was Hindus. So their intention was, their purpose was, motivation was to get rid of Hindus, and so that they could subjugate the Muslims of East Pakistan. And that's why 1971 Hindu genocide. Likewise, Muhammad Younus against Awami League, and it is perceived that Hindus are the main supporters of Awami League. They have a considerable votes, and that is creating the balance in favor of Awami League. Both Awami League and BNP, they have kind of equal voting supporters in the country. Only imbalance created by the population of Hindus that is perceived. So Younus wanted to keep the imbalance forever. And to create that, he wants to get rid of Hindus too. And that is the same way they started these atrocities, ethnic cleansing against Hindus since August 5th. And how we can prove that? Look at the numbers, the victims, the number of victims during this time, starting August 5th, 2024. The people who have been killed disproportionately are Hindus. The houses burnt, set ablaze, disproportionately Hindus. Teachers who have been forced to resign by the mobs, 30 to 40% of them are Hindus. In administration, in army, in police, the number of people who have been forced to resign, disproportionately 30 to 40% of them are Hindus. And this now the question arises, can this situation go on forever and ever? In a civilized world, in the 21st century, a Nobel Laureate in peace who is in power in Bangladesh, there is no peace in Bangladesh. He turned against an ethnic community, a religious community, only to get rid of them so that his power can be perpetuated. The world should look at it